Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Hi, it's Steve and Joe from Everag Global Insights. And Steve, we're back with a bit of a review of this week's Pulse, analysis of the New Zealand milk situation and a few other bits and pieces, of course, chart of the week.
Okay, kicking off with the Pulse result that came overnight. Negative result again. This time whole milk powder went down a bit over 1%, $35 on the latest auction. Yeah, but it's been, it's held consistent with recent events, so not a great deal of change. About skim, Joe?
Yeah, similar really for skim, down 2% compared to the last auction last week. So again, we're just seeing that slippage in ingredient prices, aren't we, as the sort of world assesses where we are at this point in the season. And speaking of this point in the season, New Zealand milk, Steve, some interesting data for March that's just been released. So milk production was 3.5% down in volume terms, but not nearly as far down in terms of milk solids. So the milk solids decline was around 1%, 1.2%. And it's really reflecting, Steve, that less grass is available at the moment, some tricky conditions there, a little bit more supplementary feeding, and we're really seeing this across the board in a lot of production regions. Supplementary feed is pretty cheap, and so we are seeing farmers top up at pretty good farm gate prices.
Yeah, so the solids in New Zealand is one of the biggest leaps in year-on-year solids, and this is, just like you said, that's been worth 1.4% alone without the underlying volume changing. So that's pretty interesting. As we get further into the season, that might be a bit more tricky with feed being more difficult. Let's see, but yeah, as you say, a global trend.
Heading across to the EU now, and as this goes to air, we will be in the US, and Europe's next, Steve, and I don't think it's ready for us. Look at that cold weather. It's been very wet, very cold, very ordinary for pasture growth, particularly in Ireland and the UK, but really a big cold system that's sitting over the continent at the moment.
I sorted out this chart. This is WX charts, and these are very dynamic, and you can see it's got a lot of purple in it. This is why I picked this one. It's very pretty. Go forward just a week, and it looks radically different, doesn't it? I mean, we see a warm air mass moving across. It's coming across from, I thought, the west, but then there's been a lot of heat build up in the east as well. Will it be enough to change things? It needs to be a long, hard bake before we see anything different. Just looking back, though, Joe, a bit over time, this is out of the Mars report put out by the Commission. We've had a pretty warm spring so far, apart from this little cold snap recently. So the question is this going to damage production as we go forward? There's been also a lot of rainfall. At this point, crops look okay. Joe, there's a risk that this excessive wet becomes more of a problem to slow down crop growth. They've already missed a cut of silage, we're told. That all bodes, it all backs into later in the year, when we see feed becoming more critical, stored feed more critical. So.
Yeah, but we really need to see that grass growth ignite, Steve. But a lot of the talk is the peak will be delayed, but a peak delayed usually means a peak flattened. You never get that milk back. So very, very much in the wind in terms of EU production, isn't it?
Yeah. So, Joe, we're looking at trade now, and how do you want to tackle this?
Well, I thought, Steve, we do 5 interesting charts from our latest trade insights analysis. There's so many, but we could only pick 5, so I'll go first. The headline year-on-year change, 7% above the prior year in February. It's a very strong start. Again, people stocking up those supply lines at pretty cheap prices. And we've seen the strongest in buying in whole milk powder for those first couple of months, Steve. And then the other favourite look of mine is the major developing market trades. And it's just staggering seeing that green line reflecting Chinese trade, that big lump of trade in 2022 that people are still remembering fondly. But this is where we are now, well below in terms of annualised trade in tonnage terms. And we can just see those other very important developing markets, Southeast Asia, trending downwards, but not too bad compared to China, for sure. And just that trending up in the Middle East that's really saved us in terms of demand, Steve.
Yeah, all the focus on China, Joe, with a lot of the analysis. But these other regions are really important. They're both kicking up, and albeit at cheap prices. So let's see how that develops.
The other one, I think I've got one more. Where has the skim milk powder trade gone? And obviously skim is the most traded commodity in the dairy complex. It's always very interesting to see what's happening with protein prices. We've seen these really steep declines in Southeast Asia through most of 2023, but you can just see, Steve, in that first part of 2024 that Southeast Asia has come back with some good import trends there in the early part of the year. China really bouncing around in terms of skim milk powder, now weaker for the last 6 months period, and MENA has been strong for almost 2 years. So really interesting to see those regional trends there, Steve, for skim.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail there.
Mm-hmm.
I get 2 charts out of the 5. I'm okay with that. So I'm looking here at butterfat trade, Joe. This developing markets trade, the stuff that's on the edge, right? That is a big chunk. It's more than half the traded butterfat in global markets. So, that's been pretty steady for a while now at elevated prices. You can see how high that is. And then the other favourite I've got is in the contestable cheese market. So there's a bit of a favourite. We've just redefined the regions here because looking at a bit more where the contest's really lurking. So cheese trade in total in the 6 months to February was up 6%. But in these selected markets where the head-to-head battles go, it's just up a bit over 2%. So that leaves out the big, Mexico, US, UK, where we've seen bigger growth. Developing regions are important here. They're all showing a bit of growth, but Japan and Korea are letting the side down. And this is still COVID stuff, right? This is still coming out of changes in restrictions into types of dining and where cheese is used. So it is, that's an evolving situation. But that trade in those 2 regions is still tracking down.
Yeah, really important, Steve. There's a lot of cheese looking for a home, and that will continue through 2024.
So the famous chart of the week, and what have you got this time, Joe?
I know everybody's waiting for it. Well, it's US milk production, and we had some more data out of the US. US milk production was down 1% in March. We've had a bit of a revision to the cow numbers, but the main driver of that 1% decline has been lower cow numbers. Yields were flat, probably a little bit better than expected, Steve. I guess the market was banking on something a little bit worse. We've seen the worst falls in the southwest states. We're starting to see maybe some effects of the avian bird flu situation, which is very dynamic. A bit of a pickup in California. And it's interesting, Steve, that those yields are flat, just reflecting on those pretty good feed prices for farmers at the moment.
It's a bit of a surprise, really.
Yeah.
But look at the big numbers last year. I mean, this time, a year ago, we had some big yield gains, so maybe they're hard to replicate.
True.
In cow numbers, Joe, you called out the cow numbers, but there's some interesting things going on there.
Yeah, we tend to have a fair bit of revision in these numbers when they come out. Every month. The previous 2 months this time were revised. So compared to the previous release, we've found a few more cows, but still well down year on year at the moment in terms of that herd.
Found more than 10,000 cows in February.
Yeah. Wonder where they were hiding.
Maybe an unfiled form. All right. Well, that's all from us this week. We're going to go and jump on a plane. Next week, you'll hear from us in Chicago. Bye for now.